Hello and welcome to another episode of Contramundum, our 2023 year in review. I am Andrew Isker, and with me is CJ. Hello, CJ. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready for the new year. Are
Oh,
you?
good.
Are you ready?
No, not
No?
not even a
20,
little.
2024 is going to be wild.
Nobody's ready for 2024. I'm afraid that's kind of how I.
2024 is going to be insane.
Yeah, we will discuss. We don't want to bury the lead here. We're going to discuss that toward the close of the episode, just how insane it is going to be. But to start out with, how was your 2023?
It was a
Was it
good
a
year.
good?
It was a
Yeah,
good
good
year.
year.
Yeah, it ended strong for me. Very, very busy. I was like, this is the year I'm just gonna relax. No relaxation. It was insane. But it was a good year.
Yeah, a lot of writing, things like that, right?
Not really. No,
Not
not
enough,
compared.
obviously.
Not compared to previous years. Too
Yeah,
much posting. Too much posting.
as always.
But yeah, I thought it was a good year.
Yeah, the people want more CJ writing, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So maybe
I want more.
we'll get to the resolutions for 2024 toward the end, but that better be one. But yeah, to start out with, I remember, we've been doing this show almost for a year. We started in February, and don't go back and watch those episodes because we were still figuring out how to do all this. But one of the first stories of the year that we talked about was, and it seems like 10 years ago. That's always.
I remember nothing. So
Yeah, I know. It seems like 10 years ago
I'm
that
excited.
all this stuff happens.
I get to hear what we talked about. So let's do it.
Right. Well, it actually happened this year. The Chinese spy balloon. Do you remember the Chinese spy balloon?
Yeah, and I thought it was just fake, stupid, like anti-China hype, and I was right. I'm gonna call a victory on that one.
Yeah, I think you were. I didn't really know and nobody really knew what to think of it, right? What even was it? And if I recall correctly, your opinion of it was there's kind of this generic anti-China stance, but it's weird because there's all of the chicanery that our ruling class does with China and all sorts of how they buy them off and things like that is tinged by that. But overall, there is this bellicose stance that is growing within the ruling class toward China, and it kind of was just, they used it to take advantage of that, right? It was. Is this ringing bells about what you said? Maybe you.
Yeah,
Forgotten?
I mean, so on foreign policy, I think I don't think I'm as like absolutist as I was during my libertarian years, but I certainly have kept the extreme like cynicism about foreign narratives.
Yeah, as you
Um,
should.
like I still think that like US is a rogue state in the world and it's the
Yeah.
causer of all these problems. I don't look at China as like the chief like or Russia or any of these
Yeah.
things. Like that. I think that United States is the engine of these like shenanigans going on everywhere in the world. So I don't buy almost anything. That's like my most libertarian position is foreign policy.
Yeah, and it isn't. And the thing is, it's one of those things where when you say that, people immediately think, oh well, you must think Putin is good and China is good, and it's like, no, that's not at all what I think. I mean, these are sovereign states that are pursuing their own interests, and
Yeah,
sometimes
I
whether
think
it's good or
it's I
bad,
think
it
it's
doesn't matter.
yeah, exactly. Like I think it's kind of a deficiency of like the American way of viewing things that we have to look at everything in terms of like good and evil.
Who are the
Um,
good guys? Well, we are,
yeah,
of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I think that's ridiculous. I think it's much more of a realistic understanding of the world to have a realpolitik view where they're basically all looking out for their own interests, except for the United States because they don't care about American interests. So
No, they are looking out for someone's interests, many someone's, but not ours as a
yeah,
people. Certainly not.
let me respond to this. Yes, the answer is yes. Like 7 years for me, probably.
this is
So
this is
Ron
where you
Paul,
bow and scrape. Yeah.
yeah, Ron Paul in 2011. And it probably crashed for me in 2020. So what's that, like 9 years maybe? Yeah. That's crazy.
2020, it took that long. I mean, you were moving away
Yeah, but I
from
was
it.
becoming, I was, yeah, but I was still would have called labeled myself a libertarian.
Paleo libertarian. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That is, yeah, I suppose. I mean, I was probably off of libertarianism by 2016 or 2017.
I thought it was cringe and gay.
Impulses.
I
Yeah.
thought it was cringe and gay, like in probably 2018 or 2019. But like, I hadn't convinced myself. Like, I was still an intellectual purist, and so I still had to cling to it because I couldn't find a way around it. So
Yeah, even within that, me too. Like I still wanted, this intellectual or ideological purity on things rather than looking at the world where it's like, it's a lot more gray than I
yeah,
really want to admit that it is. And you begin to actually, you read scripture, and particularly Proverbs and like Ecclesiastes, and and then you begin, having that, form your outlook on the world. And it's hard to be this doctrinaire libertarian where everything is in its neat little compartments and very black, very white, when you look at a world through that lens. And so that's kind of, it happened to us both independently, which is, I think, hilarious. And not just us. I mean, a lot of people that were in the more rightish libertarian world, for sure. I mean, did you see, speaking of which, did you see, Jeffrey Tucker's tweet about immigration?
hmm hmm yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's, I
It's
mean, that's
like,
an example right there.
yeah, he went off the deep end on the left
Yeah,
years ago. So I think he's been more sane in the last couple of years.
I think it was 2020 and all the craziness of 2020 that shaped things for him for sure.
Yeah, the immigration thing is actually really interesting because you can come up with a libertarian opposition to immigration, but I mean Murray Rothbard had his like he was so ahead of the game in terms of
Yeah,
recognizing that immigration is actually just a weapon. It's been weaponized, and it's a
yeah,
political tool. It has nothing to do with like these blueprint ideals of like how property owners can interact with like immigrants coming over their own private borders and stuff like that. It's
yeah,
actually
yeah,
just
yeah.
a political weapon.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not the free movement of peoples or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
even right now, and maybe we
Have
could pivot into, the
have
immigration
you
as a topic for 2023.
if you're listening to this, there's a great book called Weapons of Mass Migration. You should look it up.
Who's that by? Do you know
I
that?
forget. Just look up Weapons of Mass Migration. It's a really cool book. I mean, it goes back years and just looks at like 20th century immigration is just a tool of the state,
Yeah.
of the managerial state, I should say.
Yeah, and there was a good tweet, on the topic of immigration. That is a big story in 2023. Looking at the numbers, there have been millions of illegal aliens that have come in, and on top of the all of the legal immigrants that the
Mhm.
Biden administration have brought in as well. And so, I mean, we're talking millions upon millions. I mean, by the time his term is finished, if it does end in January of 2025, um, there will be about 15 million.
Yeah.
That those are like official numbers,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
you have to assume like they're lying. It's probably bigger than that.
That's
Um,
insane.
which,
What's
I mean, that's like
what's yeah, what's the least
half a
populous
percent.
state? What's like do you know
Is it Wyoming?
you
Maybe,
should
I don't
look at
know.
like
Yeah,
I don't know, just look it up. Population of Wyoming. I mean, that's
yeah.
crazy numbers. Population
Maybe it's Alaska.
Wyoming.
Alaska is that's a large landmass. That's certainly the least dense population.
Hey,
But
so Andrew, what just guess what the population of Wyoming is. Just throw it out there.
270,000.
600. Well, yeah, 780 or sorry, 780. 580.
Okay, I was half right.
So 15 million is it's like to say it's an invasion is
That's
like
30 Wyomings, right? That's nuts,
yeah,
man.
to say it's an invasion is so like understating what's going on here. I mean, they're
Yeah,
building mass armies.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what
You
I mean.
tweeted that the other day. Yeah,
Yeah, it's insane. I mean,
yeah.
these
Paul
are
has a good comment here. Yeah, yeah. The political solutions are rapidly disappearing. Just thinking about the Muslim flood in Europe depresses me. Well, don't be too depressed, but it is. It can be. It is, and like you're saying, CJ. it is like, yeah, to say that it's just an invasion, like invasions have happened throughout history, right? There are
Yeah.
historical analogs for invasions.
Mhm.
This is well beyond that. I mean, when you are talking about millions of people, that's massive. Like
Yeah.
that it's and the thing is, when you get into large numbers, it's hard for our minds to
Mhm.
conceptualize just how many people that is. Like,
Yeah, that's why brought up Wyoming. I
yeah,
mean, Wyoming is like a tenth of what's going on. I mean, that's insane.
yeah. I mean, just think of like the largest college football stadiums in America, like can hold 100,000 people, right?
Mhm.
So if on New Year's you're watching college football, and you see 100,000 people in Michigan or whatever, um, like multiply that by 100,
Mhm.
and then you have a scale for just how many people are flooding into the country. It's I'm at a loss for words to
Yeah,
just
I
think
mean,
about it, right?
people may disagree with me on this, but I think this is a more important issue than the trans thing because the trans thing that can be shut down like in a day, like it's stupid and like whatever. But like this is changing. This is a world historical phenomenon. This
Yeah,
is changing. This is like an epochal movement of people. This is can't even put words to it.
yeah. So like, yeah, the state of Virginia, still very populous state, 7 to 9 million.
Yeah,
So an
half.
entire, more than the entire state of Virginia in the last 4 years.
Yeah,
Right?
twice Virginia probably. Yeah.
That's it's insane. Absolutely insane. And so yeah, I mean, even like that's the thing, like this week, and I'm sorry to bring this up. Um, but the calendar thing, people going nuts about the stupid grift calendar, right? And it's like, I get people, you want to talk about whatever the thing is people are talking about. And I indulge in it tiny little bit too. But
Mhm.
like that, and even, yeah, you bring up the trans thing, you could shut down in a heartbeat
Mhm.
if you wanted to. I mean, it is a problem because of just how outrageous it is.
Mhm.
But that that could be dealt with easily. This is something that cannot be dealt
Right.
with as easily.
Yeah.
When you're talking about mass population shifts, that is it is hard to even think about how you go about fixing
I mean,
that
this is what
problem.
I said online. Like people are gonna have to really use their imaginations to understand the extent to which like political action is gonna have to be just absolutely brutal in order to reverse things. We're entering phases of political activity that the reversal will be just brutal. It'll just be insane. People are not ready for what it would take to reverse these changes, and if
Yeah.
and the consequences of not reversing them are probably even worse. So
E
that's the
Even
thing.
more brutal. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, like, when Trump says we're gonna carry out the largest mass deportation in history, right?
But that won't even cut it. What is the
What
biggest
is
deportation we've ever had? Like what? Have
I
you ever
think
had a deportation?
I think it
What's
was during Eisenhower, it was maybe a few 100,000
yeah, exactly.
over several
Yeah.
years.
People can't even
Yeah, and so it's like, it's the kind of thing where, I mean, you're talking, rounding up millions of people and shipping them out of the country. It is like I mean, people were going crazy over the kids in cages thing at the beginning of Trump's
right.
term.
Right, right.
And like, if you actually thought about what was going on there, like, these are all children that came across the border without any parents or guardian, family, relatives or anything. They're totally unaccompanied, which you're assuming they're probably being trafficked, right? And so
Mhm,
there's nothing else to do with them. There's so many of them. What do you possibly do but house them somewhere?
mhm.
And they're treating it like it's Auschwitz or something, and it's just insane.
Right.
And so that would dwarf that, right?
It
If you
would
began
dwarf that,
doing
but
that,
also you're dealing with like fighting age males. Like
yeah.
like what think about the clash. Like this is like people think I'm ridiculous, but like it would actually take an intense warfare to deal with these situations.
Well,
Plus, you
yeah.
look at the corporations that are actually sponsoring it and facilitating it. They have their own private armies, and a lot of like the army groups are bought out. They're subverted. Like there's no easy way out here.
No,
Regard.
and all of it, like, you bring up the corporations and NGOs and things like that. Like, that's the other part of it is, and back to kind of, the libertarian argument about it, where it's not just people randomly of their own volition deciding I want to go live in America now. Because, right, if you have nothing, right, and this is a point I think, I think I retweeted this tweet. If I didn't, I'm sorry. Um, it if I were gonna like on foot right now, take my family, we're gonna walk from, I live in southern Minnesota. We're just gonna walk to Iowa, which is like an hour drive from where I'm sitting now. And we had nothing but the clothes on our backs, right? That would be extremely difficult to do. Even like, okay, say it's not winter, it's summer. Just walking, 100 miles from one state to the other without any money, right? That would be nuts. And you're talking about people doing that across entire continents, right? Obviously, someone is footing the bill for this to happen and drawing these people here.
Yeah.
It's not just people randomly decide, oh, I guess I'm going to go to America now. It's being facilitated actively. Like, people are paying this. This is, like you said, it is a political weapon that they are wielding.
Yeah.
And I think so many people are afraid to even like talk about this issue.
So,
right?
Andrew, I looked up the population of Honduras, 10 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
so
like
the entire population of Honduras.
This is like, people can't grasp their minds around what's going on here.
No. I mean, I am,
like, and I told my father, I was talking to my father-in-law about it, and he's like, it's funny because like a lot of the people I tell about it, they're like, oh, that's crazy. Have you seen the game? Did you see the game last night? And it's like, dude, you like, I don't know. It's just, but people are becoming radicalized. Like, even like I was just talking to my father-in-law about it, and he's like, what do we do? Like, should I like, get my guns? I'm like, dude, stop. Don't go down that path. Yeah.
No.
So it's like, but I don't know there's no answer. There's no short-term answer, the only way out is through.
Yeah. And but at the same time, like the pressure that it's being brought to bear because of it, is something that I think is cracking the Republican Party, right? Which is completely worthless and weak. And so it goes beyond like the persona of a single man of Donald Trump, who is just kind of the conduit of this angst and anger and fury over it. It is something where, these are $100 bills lying on the ground for any enterprising, political figure to pick up. And, and again, this goes beyond someone like Trump. Like, if someone began talking about the scale of what is occurring, and the thing too, like, even, and this gets into some of the, Christian nationalism conversation and things that we've talked about before, but like if you bring in tens of millions of people, right, a massive chunk of new people that are completely different from the heritage and culture and so on and so forth of a given nation, right? You're radically changing it. It no longer is that nation anymore, right? And people need to, like, at a certain point, you add enough people, it no longer is it anymore. It's a different thing. Yeah. And so if somebody's actively facilitating, wanting this to happen, right? They want to destroy America. Like, that's the point. And people need to begin to frame it in that. And honestly, like Trump was saying this, right? He got in trouble recently saying, they're poisoning the blood.
Yeah.
They're poisoning the blood. And people obviously freaked out about that and everything else. But and part of him saying it that way is to draw the attention on this topic, right? That's why he's saying it, where it's like, okay, Mr. Liberal consensus enjoyer, right? How many tens of millions of third world people can you bring into America for it still to be America? Right? At a certain point, it no longer is. Then you're just Guatemala and Honduras and wherever else, right? At what point is it just not America anymore? Right? And the second question from that is it okay to want to keep it America?
Right.
Right? Is that morally wrong to want to retain America as a distinct people? Right? Is that wrong? And you get into this, and like there's so many Christians, many Christians that oppose, people like us that will say, no, well, America could just, die then, because that would be a
Yeah.
sin to keep
Mhm.
America around. Like that would be
Yeah.
their answer to the question.
It
I
would
guess it
be.
should just have to die. Um, it's it is it I think is the most, certainly for America, the most significant issue of this year is mass migration
Yeah.
and demographic replacement. And if people are too afraid to talk about it, well, then we're in big trouble if you can't even if you can't even bring it up.
Yeah.
Um, you want to move on to the next topic?
Well, yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, there happens to be a war in Gaza that has been ongoing since October, between Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians. We've talked about it a little bit, but early on, I think we both were like, well, I guess it's happening. Things are happening, and people were afraid of World War III, and we kind of joked around about that a little bit. But um, what do you think is the outcome
I have
ultimately
I
of
have
this
I,
conflict?
I have no idea what, like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. But it seems to me like, the nothing ever happens camp was right again in my
As they always are. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like
Until they're not.
yeah. Like so I don't know if it has anything. I've seen some like heated rhetoric, but that's
Mhm.
it. I haven't really seen. I mean, there's the same videos, the same photos, the same. This army is killing babies. Like it's just the
Yeah.
same thing. So I don't even know. Like maybe it's just a big nothing thing that we're supposed to be all enamored by.
Yeah, well, I think it is that, but I think, and this is something that it's coming out more and more, and this was the big worry from the get go, is related to the immigration point, where, and I think even maybe Netanyahu said something recently to this extent, where it's like, well, we're basically gonna depopulate Gaza, and we're gonna force the West to take all of the Palestinians, right? Which seemed like from the beginning, like that's probably the most likely outcome.
Yeah, I mean that's what America. That's the function that America plays. It's just a dumping ground for the
Yeah.
third world.
And I think that's probably what's going to occur. They'll
Mhm.
they'll turn Gaza into rubble, and we will have a few million new Americans. Right? That's probably it. I don't think there's going to be a World War III. Although some of what has occurred recently is you have the Houthis in Yemen. The rebels in Yemen who are apparently trying attacking U.S. Navy ships with drones and possibly shipping
Yeah, but yeah,
in the Red Sea.
which is just a narrative to get America involved. Like America and Israel
Yeah.
are talking about like direct action in Iraq again.
And
Where I
and then later, and of course, against Iran, there was an op-ed, I think, in the Wall Street Journal, by Naftali Bennett, saying America and Israel need to unite
yeah,
to attack Iran. And it's like, oh well, that's what we can expect under a Nikki Haley presidency. That America will be
yeah.
attacking Iran. Speaking of which,
Speaking of which,
speaking of which, you know, the odds. It doesn't obviously, like, polling wise. If the Republican primary was all on one day and it was held today, she would not win. Right? Donald Trump would be the nominee. And if the Republican National Convention happened today, he'd be the nominee. It's over. Right? But it isn't. And the odds are that some craziness is going to happen with the election. I mean, just even in this past year, the theme, I think, of 2023 is unprecedented stuff,
mhm,
right? That has occurred, even though nothing ever happens, right? As you said, right? A lot of unprecedented things have happened in the past year. The Department of Justice charging a former president of felonies is a huge deal,
mhm,
right? That is it's that too is an understatement to say. Like, this has never happened in American history ever.
mhm.
Um, and so obviously the intent is to disqualify him from the presidency, right? Everybody knows this. That's the whole point of all of these indictments of Trump. And now you have states like Colorado and Maine that are taking him off the ballot
Mhm.
for the primaries and for the general election.
It's funny because so I actually agree with Charles Haywood here that I want these things to happen. Like this is
Yeah, you're
accelerationism.
an
Like
accelerationist.
yeah,
Yeah,
like yeah, finally
you're a bad boy.
something exciting is going to happen here. Let's do it. Let's knock them off all the ballots and just peel the mask off this regime. Like I'm fine with that because it's not like he's going to do anything in office anyways. I'd
Yeah,
rather have the regime exposed, people agitated, people caring more about what's happening in their world than they've ever cared before. Like because like America has this privilege of basically not having to pay attention to politics.
yeah.
And not just electoral politics,
Like politics as such.
like
Yeah,
politics as like the concept of the political, like the
yeah,
clash of friends and enemies. That's what we need to rediscover. And so I think these extremist measures that the Democratic Party is taking is good. It helps people realize the regime is actually not just a movie. And number two, it helps
yeah,
them realize that the GOP is completely worthless and needs to burn to the ground.
yeah.
So those
It's
two things need to happen.
that has been, the recurrent theme of, of our show for the past year is that, I mean, even in the things that I say or you say about Trump, right? And this is where I think a lot of people get confused. They think I'm just like, oh, Donald Trump could do no wrong. He's so wonderful. He's so great. And it's like, no, like that's not why I want him to be the guy and doing the things that he's doing. But because his existence as a political figure delegitimizes the regime by default. Right? They
Hmm.
cannot help themselves but to do these things,
Hmm.
right? Just because he exists.
Hmm.
And I mean that is the great irony in all of this is if they don't do the impeachment trials, or if they don't do the Russia hoax, if they don't do COVID and the BLM color revolution, right? If they don't, and the fortifications, or if they don't do that stuff, and they just let him do the minor little tweaks to the American liberal establishment that he wanted to do for 8 years, right?
Hmm.
Say they just let him do what he wanted, right? Whatever he wanted to do, right? It wouldn't dynamically affect things that much.
Right.
It
Right.
wouldn't. I mean, it'd shave off a little bit of their power, right? That's it. It'd just be all the guy was gonna do was the most minor. I mean, he's rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic, is what he
Hmm.
was doing. He wasn't going to cut, trillions of dollars from the federal budget and do Javier Milei kind of stuff. Just get rid of 2/3 of the federal government. He wasn't going to do that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
That never was going to happen. He was going to slow down the influx of immigration. He was going to pursue a realist foreign policy to a certain extent, and they couldn't do it, right? They could not possibly allow that to happen
Hmm.
because it's an actual genuine challenge. Yeah, this is exactly right from Jammy Starfish. Except it would be 8 years without new wars. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the point. I mean, I posted about this, the other day, where this is. I mean, this is the reason why they can't have him. And this is another topic we're going to get to, the Ukraine war. And yeah, he goes on to say he threatened to leave NATO, and that was unacceptable. You'll remember this. Back, I mean, those of us old heads who were around in 2015, right? Remember that he was like this media darling, and he was entertaining, and they would attack him but not really that hard, and they thought it was like, oh, it's just this little flash in the pan. People, once the primary really goes, he'll fizzle out. And they didn't start really attacking him until he said, why are we in NATO? We got all these rich countries. They don't pay anything. We're getting hosed. Like they're taking all our money, right? He's saying all this stuff, and then the knives are out. Like, no, you can't do that. No, no.
Yeah,
Like that's
because people
that's
were
it.
cheering. People loved it.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
and like all the grill Americans are like, yeah, are like,
Yeah.
yeah, why are we in NATO?
Right. Right.
That's a good question. Nobody really asked that question, and like he's asking stuff like that because, right, and you see like what is NATO being used for, right? What under Obama, right? What was NATO doing, right? What was its existence predicated upon? To be a threat to Russia, because they want regime change in Russia. They want to do to Russia what they did to Ukraine in 2014. That's the entire point, right? And people have no idea. Like, even in the context, we could kind of pivot to Ukraine a little bit, but even in the context of Ukraine, right? I'll talk to, I had a conversation during Christmas with an older, boomer relative, and I was explaining, we were talking about Ukraine, and I'm like, yeah, I think the war is pretty much over. And, this relative of mine is like, what? Really? Russia's going to lose? And I'm like, no, no, they won. It's done. Like, the average age of a Ukrainian soldier today, it's like 43 years old.
Yeah.
Right. Like, they don't have any men left. Like, they're starting to take amputees and literal dwarves. No, did you see that? Like,
I didn't see Ben Shapiro in there. No. Anyways,
yeah, like they just released a new list of like people that are acceptable for service now, and it's like all of the people that no longer could like medically qualify, right? They're conscripting those people, taking those people, and so it's like they're scraping the absolute bottom. They're out of men. And it doesn't matter how many hundreds of billions the United States sends in arms and everything else to them, it's done. And so I'm explaining, like, hey, like, do you know, like, why the war is happening? Like, and because in their mind, like, listening to Fox News or whatever, or Ben Shapiro or whoever, is Vladimir Putin is literally Hitler, and he just wants to roll tanks across Europe. And if we don't stop him here, he's going to take over everywhere. Like, that is the thing that they believe in their heart of hearts.
Yeah.
Because that's what they've been told. They have no idea. Like, hey, you know what happened in 2014 in Ukraine? Like, Obama couped their government, right? He just overthrew their government. They had a president that they elected, and he was kind of in, middle of the ground, maybe a little pro-Russia, and which would make sense because you're bordering that country.
And half the population is Russian.
Yeah, is ethnic Russian.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but certainly in the eastern half of the country, a lot of ethnic Russians. And it's like, okay, and they get rid of him, and all the two most Russian provinces, right, Donetsk and Luhansk, say, well, this is not a legitimate government, so we're seceding. And so they did, and became independent republics. And the Ukrainian army for 8 years bombed them.
Right.
It dropped artillery shells on villages for 8 years, and nobody had any idea about this. And finally, when the Biden administration says, yeah, we should have Ukraine join NATO, and we're going to start that process, Putin says, all right, that's it. We're going in. And like, if just to have it framed in reality of what actually happened, then you understand, okay, this is not what I have been told at all. All right. And so you look at like 2017, like, why didn't this happen, from 2017 to 2021? It's because, right, Trump didn't push these things. Yes, he gave arms and things to Ukraine. He basically maintained the status quo that was extant when he came into office. And that's too much, right? Just too much for them. They wanted to plunder Russia. They thought, okay, if we can bog the Russians down in Ukraine and kill enough Russians, their government's going to collapse. We're going to put on sanctions on Russia, and their whole economy is going to collapse because it's nothing but a gas station, right? And well, lo and behold, and we're going to bomb this pipeline because they're not going to be able to sell oil and gas to Europe anymore, and their economy is going to tank. And that didn't happen. Like, none of the stuff that they tried to do happened. And so, right, here we are. They lost this war. It's over. And the most, I think, interesting thing, most important thing, as it pertains to like domestic politics, is this is, I think, probably the best litmus test of all of these Republican, also ran candidates, is where were they at on Ukraine?
At the beginning, yes.
At the beginning of the campaign, and or even before.
Well, at the beginning of the war, of the conflict. Yeah.
What did they say? Right, because from the beginning, like, you have Trump, and he's a shrewd political operator. Like, people think he's an idiot, but he's like, the war would be over in 5 minutes if I was president, right? We would have a peaceful negotiation. And the
Mhm.
negotiation would be they get Donetsk and Luhansk. Like it's gonna start and end there.
Mhm.
Um, and that's probably what would have been conceded, right? And so, right, but you look at this, like, and this is why when you get into like the DeSantis stuff, and I mean, I hate even talking about him at this point because it's done, it's over, like it's finished. But I think it's instructive to the people that are like still hanging on to hope that maybe we can get him somehow. Is he goes on Tucker Carlson even before he announces as a candidate and says basically realist foreign policy stuff about Ukraine. Like, we should not be sending arms and weapons unaccountably over there, and we should try to end this war. And within 24 hours, right, he releases all these statements that says the exact opposite. No, we need to stop Putin and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, why does he do that? Why does
Mhm.
he say those things? Because he's not a billionaire. He can't
Mhm.
fund his own campaign and say whatever he wants.
Right.
He can't say what he actually believes. He
This
has
has
to do what the
been
donors say.
this has been my problem with Ron DeSantis from the beginning. I've never been like all that. Like I loved him as governor and all that, but like we just talked about the immigration thing. Like I haven't heard barely anything from Ron about like the world historical crisis at the southern border. The only
Yeah.
one even mentioning it is Vivek.
Yeah. Which is,
So,
I mean, the irony of
which is
ironies,
hilarious.
right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean that's part of our culture too, is white people can't defend themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we have to have an Indian guy do it for us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We have to we have to like the Indians are taking all of our jobs, including pointing out the problem at the border.
Yeah, but I mean the thing with him too is um it is, I mean, initially like the Trump thing, I just thought like, oh, this is the thing Republicans always talk about, right? It's not that big a deal. And that's how they treat it. It's like just one of many issues, right? Oh, let's talk about the economy and let's talk about Obamacare and all these different things. And yeah, I guess we should talk a little bit about immigration. And it's like, no, like that's the big domestic issue,
Right.
bar none. And if you're just treating it like that's just another part of my campaign platform, we're gonna secure the southern border. It's like,
Yeah. Or
what?
like crack down on illegal immigration or something.
Yeah,
Like they're literally
just
shipping in
boilerplate talk.
hordes. It's yeah, it's like it's funny because Camp of the Saints is like literally like understated the entire problem.
Yeah, it's it's much bigger than that,
Yeah.
right? And it's like work of fiction. And and it's like the fact that I don't know why. I mean, I actually I do know why. It's because his donors don't want it to be dealt with,
Hmm.
right? Because they benefit from it,
Hmm.
right? That's why. Like the Republican Party is dominated by massive corporate interests that benefit from mass migration. They benefit from foreign policy adventurism, and if somebody threatens that, the gravy train is over. And so like that's why. And I guess yeah, one of the other events of 2023 is this, very impressive governor that, you and I both, had a high opinion of. Um I think has had the most disastrous presidential primary campaign for
Yeah.
like where he started,
Yeah.
in my entire lifetime. I can't
Yeah.
think of an example of a
It's
disappointment
It's
like
amazing
him.
though, like how much potential he had. First of all, why did he run?
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, we don't. This wasn't really a 2023 topic, maybe that we covered, so you can move on to. But there's a lot to say about DeSantis, and there's a lot of lessons for future Republican or otherwise candidates. Like like how many times does it have to be made plain to you? Stop listening to the donor classes.
Yeah, and the consulting class.
Hmm.
Yeah, like that's I mean, yeah, but the problem is they have to.
Yeah, because he
They have
needs
to listen to them.
financially, he can't exist without them. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
like you have to be independently wealthy to be
Mhm,
able to step out of line and
mhm,
say what people want. Like that's the thing about all of this is um like I saw, today about Governor Mike DeWine who vetoed this, trans bill, right?
right.
And Jesse Kelly, who I actually I have a lot of people dog on him. I kind of like him. Um
Mhm.
He tweeted out the Republican primary, results from the last election, and DeWine won by like 30 or 40%. Like he dominated,
Mhm.
and it's like, see, the voters need to. It's their fault. It's the Republican primary voters' fault, and it's like, come on, man. Like, do you really believe that? Like
Yeah.
that they just like they could just will themselves to have a better gubernatorial candidate than Mike DeWine,
Mhm.
right? No, that all these problems are for the top down,
Mhm.
right? The donors wanted Mike DeWine in office.
Mhm.
The donors wanted it. They didn't want anybody else. That's why it is that way. And Trump is the outlier to all of this,
Yeah.
right? That's what people need to understand. It's like, oh, the Republican primary voters finally got one right. How about that? It's like, no, he's the outlier because he ran with his own money, at
Mhm.
least initially,
Mhm.
right? Like that's why. Like people do not like in his heart. I mean, maybe he does believe it and actually believes in democracy and in
Yeah.
populism and things like maybe that's the problem is like he actually
That is
believes
the I
that
mean, that is the problem. Like, you have got to get over that. Like, you cannot pretend like it's like 1915 or something, and like
he's
you're
got to
just
vote better, guys.
so out of touch.
I know.
Every day is out of touch Thursday if you believe in
It's
democracy.
that's that's
Quote
right.
that. That's a
Quote
quote.
that. That is a
Quote that.
quote.
If you believe in democracy, every day
Every
is out of
day
it's out of touch Thursday.
is out of touch Thursday. Well, on that point, on believing in democracy, one of the other events. This is more personal rather than like meta political stuff, but the G3 conference and various associated, evangelical, ostensibly conservative evangelicals, went on the warpath against Christian nationalism this summer. And so, we
What if
talked a
and
good
they
amount
sh
about
yeah,
that.
it was a complete suicide campaign. Like,
The kamikaze, man.
yeah, no, seriously. No, seriously. I think I can't think of an issue where they. I mean, obviously Christianity. We all have fun like making fun of Christianity today, but like no
Yeah.
group has done so much to just shoot themselves in the foot than all the G3 people attacking Christian nationalism. It's
Well,
is
yeah,
amazing.
and part of it, other people have made this point, but I think it's worth saying here is, in from like 2015 to 2020, you had a pretty monolithic conservative evangelicalism, right? At least on the internet and kind of within the public mind, right? You had, Tim Keller and Russell Moore and people like that kind of at the top of the hierarchy. You had the Gospel Coalition at the top of the hierarchy. And after 2020, or by 2020, that collapsed, right? You
Hmm.
can look at like the Gospel Coalition on Twitter, and like you or I can send a tweet about our lunch, like take a picture of our lunch, and
Hmm.
it'll get more engagement than the average than really anything that they post.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's insane, right? It's dead. It's gone, and so there's this vacuum, right? There's this vacuum for like who's going to take the mantle of the big organization that will lead evangelicalism,
Hmm.
and G3 was really poised to kind of take that, right? It's a, to speak in crass business terms, it was about market share,
Yeah.
and so they wanted to be the big boys at the king of the hill, and that I think they were trying to flex their muscles that way and be able to say like we're at the top, and this we're going to set the bounds of what evangelicals are allowed to believe politically. And the problem with that is, I mean, because what you had after 2020 is like Russell Moore goes to Christianity Today, and it was already super woke, and it's only gotten even worse. You see today, their big article is about using pronouns, and so like that's just super left
Yeah.
wing, right?
And by the way,
Um,
I'm all for it. Like it's part of like the accelerate. Like it needs to burn.
oh
Like
yeah,
it's just hilarious. It's a good thing. They're exposing themselves
yeah,
as capitulating to every regime talking point there is.
yeah, and you see this with like Acts 29 has kind of done this. Like they kicked out our friend Chase Davis for being too right wing. or something. Yeah, actually, I don't think he even actually knows why he was taken out. And all these different groups that were at the top of evangelicalism. Two things have happened. They've either gone like super left, or they've tried to situate themselves as like the anti-woke liberals.
Mhm.
Right. That's the two directions that people went. And what's hilarious is like we've talked about this in previous episodes, like wokeness arose out of the liberal post-war consensus. And so to take liberalism and champion it to oppose wokeness is self-defeating. Right?
Yeah.
You're always going to end there anyway.
Mhm.
And so and so you see this, like they latch on to James Lindsay, and which also is just hilarious.
Mhm.
And they latch onto him and like uh, just start tweeting out obnoxious, really half-baked criticisms of anything to their right.
Mhm.
And they showed, they demonstrated just their foolishness, and how they hadn't thought through any of these things. And they talk, I mean, you see this with like Jenna Ellis, right? Every time she tweets out something stupid, that they have no frame to think about these things outside of liberalism, and we love democracy and freedom, and we are against socialism and things like that. And there's nothing, there's no there, right?
Yeah.
And so what is happening is, yeah, they shoot themselves in the foot big time. And what is there? What is left? Right. Well, the emergent new Christian right is the thing that people are going to, because right, we're telling the truth about things that no one else will tell the truth. I mean, just talking about immigration, for instance, like that's a topic they would never dream of touching. They would just talk about it in the same way Ron DeSantis does, like boilerplate. Well, yeah, we should secure the border. That's a good idea, I guess. Like, but they're not going to talk about it in these terms that you are. That this is something that is unprecedented in the history of the world, like world historic nightmare that is
Mhm.
being wrought upon America. They're not going to talk about it that way ever,
Right.
ever. And
Right.
so, I it was just this self-immolation that they did this year. It really is something remarkable, in terms of not being able to see the writing on the wall and continue to plow ahead this way. I'm I'm blown away by it. It is uh I mean, it's been good, actually. Like
Yeah.
they need to. I mean, I would prefer that they would just agree with us, obviously, but I think for people to kind of repudiate, their whole system and
Mhm.
what they think, it has been great.
Yep.
Um, so anything else to add about that, or anything else from the year that was 2023? If we covered it, is there anything big we missed? Maybe someone in the comments can bring it up. But I think we covered everything I wanted to talk about today. Anything you got, CJ, for 2023?
Yeah. Not really. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously we talked about all the Trump stuff. I mean, it's just like the same. Like, you can talk about it again and again, all the different
Yeah,
cases and
yeah,
indictments, and it's all fake. So it is interesting though to see. Well, let's talk about this. I know we have a couple minutes left. Do you think that Trump is actually going to get the nomination in the presidency? Do you
yeah. We
think?
didn't talk about this.
Do
Yeah,
you think? Do you think he's going to be on the ballot against Joe Biden?
those are two different questions, but similar. I think. I mean, I think he's going to win.
The Republican nomination or the whole thing?
The whole thing.
Oh, really? Because
Yeah.
that's
Well,
different.
yeah. This is where we we disagree.
Well,
I'm
no,
optimistic.
I don't know if I disagree.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
I
he's going to
don't
win. I
You don't
think
think they're gonna stop him?
think they're going to try. I think they're going to try every. They're going to throw out every possible thing they can. I mean, that's what this is. I
So
mean, some of
so
it
so what
is.
do you think about Vivek's theory that
Yeah. So I wanted to get to that, to Vivek's
yeah.
theory, or the thing that he kind of threw out that's vague and cryptic. Um, right. We should maybe tell the listeners like what is going on with Vivek. He says that there's some kind of plot, and
There's a deal. The deal was
yeah,
made.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
a deal that they're not going to replace Biden with with Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or someone like that. There's been a deal that has been made, and it's risky to them, but they're going to try it. And so I think what he's referring to is they're going to try to sabotage Trump getting the nomination, right? Disqualify him, all these different things, jail him, whatever, and give Nikki Haley the Republican nomination.
That's his
And
theory, right?
and then she'll, beat, because people don't like Biden. They'll like her more than him. And she'll
I
win she'll win. They won't do any of their fortifications,
I could see
and
them
she'll
doing it
win.
with Ron, but who likes Nikki Haley?
Oh, nobody
Like,
does. But
I don't
who
I
liked
don't
who liked Mitt Romney? Who liked John McCain? Right? Like nobody does. Right? And so I think this is their gambit that they're going with, is that they'll obstruct Trump, keep him from taking office, and in one sense they're probably thinking, right, well, it'll be good because it'll be a Republican, and that'll be some red meat to red America, that at least a Republican won. And part of it too is they will be able to say, look, Trump's just a loser,
Mhm,
right? He lost fair and square. There's no cheating. The elections are secure, right? See, a Republican can win,
mhm,
and like that's part of it too. I think, right? Because part of it is to restore confidence in the system, right? They see
right,
they see uh the delegitimization that has happened to
right.
them, and they want to re-legitimize, right? And so this is what like Rothbard said about and others have said about Ronald Reagan, right? Is that after Watergate and everything else, all the delegitimization that happened in the 70s, here's this re-legitimizing figure.
Yeah, right,
um
exactly.
and
Mhm.
so that's what I think it's her, right? Because she's an Indian Hillary Clinton, is what she is,
Yeah.
right, in the Republican Party.
So you think, yeah, but do you think she'll actually be able to beat Joe Biden?
Yes. Yeah. I think at this point, sans fortification, any of the Republicans.
See, here's the
Um,
downside though. Here's the downside. Like if the choice is between Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, like the number of people that will go out to vote
I
will
wouldn't
just be
vote for
like
her.
nothing.
Yeah.
Like nobody will, like, who cares? Like that's a delegitimization
Oh yeah.
factor right there.
Well, and I think that's part of the gambit is like at a certain level, you're dealing with pretty stupid people, right? Who I think they would think in their minds that like a plot like this would work. Um,
They also think that America loves them more than America actually loves them. So
Precisely,
yeah.
precisely. And so I don't think people realize, like, if you take Trump off the ballot or if you throw him in prison, people are not going to all of a sudden, well, I guess we have to vote for Nikki Haley now, right? No, people are going to be furious.
I'm not voting for Nikki Haley.
No, I would,
So
like,
yeah.
you would have to point a gun to my head to make me vote for her,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm not going to do it. And I don't think, probably anybody listening to this
Yeah.
is going to do the same, or anyone listening to this is going to do anything like that. Anyone that loves Trump, which I mean, you're talking tens of millions of people that love Donald, they're never going to vote for her.
Mhm.
And so I don't think it would work. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe Biden would just win somehow, right?
Accelerate. Yeah.
But but I think I think Vivek is. I don't think he's just blowing smoke about this
Yeah.
stuff. Like
But here's the other thing. So if Vivek knows, there's got to be people around Trump that know this.
yeah.
So why is Trump out there saying nice things about Nikki Haley?
Well, I mean, you have the you have the like leaks from the Trump camp this like last week, where they're like, well, maybe he's gonna pick her as the VP. I don't know. He's considering her. And like, I mean, I think most of that was obviously fake, because it's the same thing. It's like, I think I wouldn't vote for him if he did that. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people
Yeah,
think the same thing.
they've got to know that. The team.
And Trump knows that. And like Don
Yeah.
Jr. tweets out, like, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure this never happens. Like, no,
Yeah.
I think they know it. I mean, Trump does do this stuff. Remember, like, the iconic picture of Mitt Romney at dinner with Trump, like, maybe I'll make you Secretary of State. No,
Yeah.
and nope.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
That was pretty funny. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so it's like he does that kind of stuff,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, and some of it is just the game of
Showbiz.
politics,
Yeah.
right? You're keeping friends close and enemies closer, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so
She is like I mean, Joe Biden obviously has, like, something seriously wrong with him, but Nikki Haley's dumber than Joe Biden is.
I think so, and that's saying something. Like
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
mean, you saw this week for some reason they're talking about the Civil War, and they're asking her like,
yeah.
"Well, Nikki, what was the cause of the Civil War?" And she's talking about like, freedom, and like, I mean, she's talking about it like it's
She
in
was
1980.
people need to remember too, she was on the leading edge of, like, tearing down Lee statues and all that stuff
Yes. Yeah,
too.
she took,
Yeah.
like, South Carolina for decades, right, flew the Confederate flag over their capital.
Right.
She's the one that took it down.
Right,
And
right,
so
right, right.
she was the yeah, the leader of that whole thing. And so some of it is like, I mean, she obviously knows, like, the standard answer you're supposed to give is, "Well, slavery caused it,"
Yeah, she couldn't even do that.
and she couldn't even do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think it's because, like, she's afraid of offending people in the South. Because she took down the Confederate flag in South Carolina. Like, she has no problem with
Yeah.
putting her thumb on those people, and so um, I think she's just really dumb,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you listen to her talk. It's there's nothing that, like, she just even like the debate clip of Vivek saying, "Can you name 3 provinces in Ukraine?"
Yeah.
And she can. She just
Yeah.
laughs. She could do it. And it's like,
Uh,
no, she's dumber than a box of rocks. And
yeah.
so,
Well, I mean, Murray Rothbard said this too, like, speaking of Murray Rothbard, he's like, "We we want these people in government. We want people who can't even find the doorknob." Like, this is who we want in there, so,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, well, to a certain extent, that's what we want. But
Well, they're not in power anyways, right? They're
no,
like the president has no power.
yeah, yeah,
He's just
Joe Biden is not pulling the switches on the government. Like, we
right.
know that. And she wouldn't either. Like, she would just literally be a figurehead for her administration, just like Biden. His administration is the one doing everything, and hers would be the same, right?
Yeah.
They would be crafting all the policy. They would be the ones forming all the executive orders. She's really, literally, she would just be signing her name to a piece of paper every day, and
And maybe she
and
could do
giving
that.
dumb speeches.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so, I mean, yeah, I don't want to ponder like what could happen. I mean, and the difficult thing is, like, so much of this is in the hands of the United States Supreme Court, which is already proven to be incredibly cowardly in anything dealing with elections.
Mhm.
And it has always been that way. I mean, it was that way in 2000 with Bush versus Gore. Right? People forget that. They think like the Supreme Court decided the election, when actually what happened was the state of Florida under Jeb Bush voted to end the recount and award their electoral votes to George W. Bush.
Mhm.
And that's what ended it. And the Supreme Court issued their ruling as like a fig leaf to um to cover their own authority, to make it look like they're the ones that did it. See, we're the all powerful Supreme Court, but like they were moved by politics.
Mhm.
And so in this thing too, like, there's a reason why in 2020 they didn't accept any of the Trump campaign's appeals before the election, which that was the thing that afterward, right, they said, and all the federal
Right.
judges said, is like, well, this was stuff for before the election. And it was like, we filed all these lawsuits to try to stop this stuff, which was totally unconstitutional, right? State secretaries of state. This is the thing with Maine. The Secretary of State of Maine can't just unilaterally say, nope, can't be on the ballot, right? That's the job of the legislature
Yeah.
to determine those things if this man is disqualified,
Mhm.
right? Not or federal courts, right, to determine, is he guilty of insurrection, right? Not one person. It's so absurd. But like, they're very cowardly. They don't want to do that because they actually don't have the power that people think they have,
Mhm.
right? They are a tool of the regime, right? They serve at their pleasure, right? All it takes is Joe Biden or whomever just packing the court, right? They can do that.
Yeah.
right? There's no constitutional amendment that says it has to be 9 people. There
Right.
could be 500 people on the Supreme Court, right?
Right.
I mean, just imagine that 500 Kentucky Brown Jacksons,
Oh yeah.
right on the Supreme Court.
Let's accelerate.
Yeah, now you're really going hard. But like that's what it would be, right? So that right there, I'm maybe talking myself into blackpilling here. Um,
No, those are the white pills.
yeah, the
Those are the
black
white
pill,
pills.
the
The white
black pill on this stuff is the white pill.
That's
That's
what
right.
that's what I keep telling you. Like those are the
Yeah,
things that get people like shaken up.
yeah,
Those are the white pills. The black pill is that like nothing ever happens.
yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. The white pill to this is, I mean, either way, I can go either way. I mean, I think they'll be forced to issue some kind of ruling to clarify these things.
Hmm.
Right? I don't think they could just let this go on. Right? They have to do something. And so I think they'll be overturned. Like the Colorado Supreme Court will be overturned. Probably the Maine
Well, didn't it
Secretary of
already
State
didn't
too.
didn't Colorado's thing already get reversed?
I think they issued a stay on their own order.
Yeah.
Which is kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think he still gets the nomination, right? And the thing that they don't get is like with all the plotting and all this kind of stuff that they don't get is that every single thing they've done, they thought, all right, well, if we indict him, it's it for Trump after that. And he goes up 10% in the polls every time they do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
and so if they try to do something like this, like even regular ordinary people that aren't even like not even regular ordinary Trump supporters, I'm talking like people that are totally apolitical entirely will be like, that's pretty weird. I don't know. I think that's wrong. And I think I'm on his side. Like that's what happens when they do these things. And so yeah, push the accelerate button more and more. Because like people need to see that, and so much of this stuff, it always goes back to um when you go to the grocery store and the stuff you buy every week costs 20% more than it did 6 months ago, right? And maybe in a year it'll be 50% more because they're
Hmm.
going to lower interest rates,
Hmm.
right? That's when people like actually care,
Hmm.
right? Normal people, and we're not, and this is not like a populist argument or anything, because I don't think these things arise out of populism. But it's like normal people don't care until they're forced. Like you just grab them by their force. You will care, and you're gonna care because now you can't buy stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like now you have to care. You could worry about whether the Vikings were going to win or lose this weekend against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. That could be your biggest concern in the entire world. You could worry about, this, whatever the next Marvel movie is or whatever. Like, no, now it's like the rubber is meeting the road economically. It's bad.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, okay, yeah, keep pushing the acceleration, but I don't want that. I don't want to, it doesn't
There's
do me any good
Yeah.
to have to pay more money for my groceries and everything else, or it doesn't do any of us any good. But I think in terms of like the overall politics, people don't care until they're forced to care,
Exactly.
and so that's where I think we're at, and that's where things are going to go in 2024. Like, do you think? I mean, I think this is maybe the last topic of conversation because I know you got to go and I do too. What do you think the crazy black swan of 2020? I mean, it's a bad question because you can't predict a black swan by definition. But like one, is there going to be one?
So,
And
so
two,
yeah,
what could it be?
I think there's going to be a fake Christian nationalist terror attack thing, like
Like a false flag kind of
right wing.
MK Ultra thing.
What do they call it? Christo fascist.
Yeah.
There's going to be something crazy, and we're going to get blamed for it. That's
Yeah. It seems like they're trying to prime the pump for that,
mm-hmm.
for sure. This is maybe why.
Or do you think it's too early? I think 2024 could be the year for that. Do you think it's too early for that?
If I were in charge of all the ops, like if I were sitting in the Hoover building right now thinking like, what can we do? I would say let it grow to be like an actual thing, like a big thing where you have instead, because I mean, how many people are identify with the new Christian right and Christian nationalism and things like that, like positively,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe 10 or 20,000 people tops,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if it became a thing where you're talking like a million people believe this, that would be the time to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or 500,000 people, right? When you have a large enough chunk of people that are like, this is my thing, this is what I believe, then it's time to, you know, do shenanigans like that. And so if they do it, if they do it early, because you want it to be at least a semblance of an actual threat, right? That's what you want. And so I I don't know. They might go half
That's kind
cocked
of that's going to be my prediction for the theme of 2024 is Christian extremism.
that they're going to like conjure up this
Yeah.
boogeyman of it.
Yeah, I don't know if
They've
it's
been
gonna be
doing
like
it.
a
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be like a one-time thing or if it's just gonna be like this sustained narrative drip, about how
Yeah.
dangerous these people are,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I think that could be. I mean, and this is why. Yeah, this is a good question from Forms Respecter. Um, does it matter if they paint all evangelicals who are not okay with gays
of
as Christian
course.
nationalism? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it does. I mean
yeah.
that's part of like the question of
That's what's hilarious. Like all these people
yeah,
like Brady Bush and like all these people on Twitter,
Owen Strahan,
they're
like
all gonna get the same label.
yeah, like you see this, like they called Nathaniel Jolly a
Yeah, yeah,
Christian
yeah.
nationalist because he posted something against gay marriage or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and it's like yeah, that's what you're going to be labeled no matter what. That's the point that like Torb and I have made, and Wolf and many others have made is like when
You're on
people
you're on the train, buddy. Yeah.
yeah, if you're a Christian and you are in any way politically opposed to the regime, guess what, buddy?
Yep.
You're a Christian nationalist.
Yep.
Sorry. So you can hate the label and go kicking and screaming about the label, but you are. That's that because it doesn't matter to us, right? What we positively call ourselves.
Mhm.
It matters what they call us.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important, I think, to unify around a distinctively Christian politics, right? And people don't want to do that. They want to I want to be totally secularist and pluralist and have 1990s America forever. That's not possible. And so yeah, I think in terms of the question of right, you go by that label, right? Because they do this all the time. Nobody like it's like Schrodinger's cat, right? No one is actually a Christian nationalist, but also there's tens of millions of them,
Mhm.
right? They do both things. They'll be like, well, according to this polling,
Mhm.
lots of people agree with Christian national. Most evangelicals agree with Christian nationalism
Yeah.
based on the metrics. Yeah, exactly. So, and so with regards to timing, like if they're doing it that way, and they
Yeah,
want
that's
to paint any conservative evangelical as a terrorist, right? Then you're probably right, CJ. That 2024 is the year for them to do false flag stuff,
mhm.
and so it's incredibly important for
Well,
our people to
and
be
then
vigilant.
they're gonna put out things like, like extremist warnings. Like if someone
Yeah,
opposes gay marriage, they're probably a Christian nationalist, and Christian nationalists are known for,
yeah,
terror campaigns and stuff or
yeah,
whatever. Like
yeah,
that's
and it's like
it's an easy game for them to play.
yeah, they could try to do this. I mean, it's easy in one sense and difficult in the other because, right, like Muslims actually do have a history of using violence, right? It's obvious they did. So they could do that during the war on terror because there were plenty of examples. Like the worst violence from Christians is like, people burning down abortion clinics and things like that, which is almost universally condemned by Christians to do that stuff. And so it's much more difficult, like rhetorically, for them
Mhm.
to play this game. I mean, they tried to do it January 6th and say that was a Christian nationalist insurrection, because somebody put a big cross out in front of the Capitol, and they'd love to use that picture. But I think it'll be much harder. Like they'll actually have to have somebody do like a shooting or something like that, and then have Stephen Wolf's book in the car or something, right? I mean,
Right.
no, I mean,
No,
I'm,
no,
I'm
no,
not
yeah.
even joking. Like
No,
they'll
I
try
I
to do
know.
stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah. Or your book, yeah.
Yeah, and say I was inspired by, and it's like no, like every possibility, every possible chance I get, I say we are totally nonviolent. Anybody who even breathes a word of violence, you need to totally repudiate and steer clear of people like that entirely.
Mhm.
And that I think is the message to for 2024 that has to be blasted everywhere is we are nonviolent. Never ever going to do violence. That's not what this is about ever. That anything that occurs, any use of force has to be political and legitimate.
Although I will say, Andrew, I'm about to go violently eat some tacos, so I probably
Oh well,
gotta get
back
some.
you full circled
I
back to
gotta
the
go.
immigration question. All right, well,
That's true, that's true. Without immigration, I would have no way of
you'd be
knowing how to
starving
put it.
today.
Yeah,
You wouldn't
yeah,
have anything to
putting
eat.
beans inside a tortilla.
And a piece of bread, probably. I don't know. Well, yeah, I have to get going too. Thank you all so much for listening and making for us personally 2023 a great year. It has been so much fun. If you haven't liked and subscribed and all of that stuff, do it. We want to get to 1,000 subs on YouTube before the end of the year. We're very, very close. So tell your friends, make 50 burner accounts, and we'll get there. But for us, stay peacefully and non-violently dangerous. And until next year, we'll see you next time.